It comes like a shadow, quiet, familiar, and far too close. One moment, you're just living, finishing a conversation, catching your reflection, opening that one message you were hoping to avoid. And then, without warning, it coils around your thoughts. That voice. Not loud, it doesn't need to be. Just sharp enough to cut. Why did you say that? You looked ridiculous. They see right through you. It doesn't arrive with drama, just a subtle shift. Like a temperature drop in a room. Like something inside you shrinking, just slightly. It has become like background noise. It feels natural, almost normal, as if it were the truth. You don't argue with it, because on some level, you've accepted it. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because when a lie is repeated often enough in your own voice, it stops feeling like a lie. It becomes the atmosphere you breathe. You start to navigate life through its filter, dimming your confidence, second-guessing your instincts, bracing for rejection even before it comes. That voice isn't your intuition. It isn't logic. And it definitely isn't helpful. But it lives inside you like it belongs there, a silent saboteur that holds you back from stepping into your real potential. That's your inner critic. And for many people, it's been shaping how they see themselves for as long as they can remember. It's not the voice of truth, but the voice of fear. Of shame. Of every moment you felt unseen, not good enough, or too much for the world around you. It rarely begins with self-hate. It often starts with self-protection, a learned response to environments where being vulnerable was unsafe. It may have begun as a child's attempt to fit in, to avoid punishment, or to earn approval. But what starts as survival becomes a lifelong habit, one that continues long after the threat is gone. It's time to understand where that voice comes from, and how to finally stop letting it run your life. According to Carl Jung, every person wears a mask, a persona, to survive in society. We show the world what we think it wants to see, the polite version, the capable version, the strong one. But everything we hide, all the vulnerability, the fear of rejection, the pain of not being accepted, doesn't disappear. It gets pushed into what Jung called the shadow. And the inner critic is often the voice of that forgotten self, the part of you that was never allowed to fully exist. It speaks from the places that were silenced, judged, or reshaped to fit in, carrying the weight of everything you had to hide just to feel acceptable. It mimics the people who once made you feel small, parents, teachers, peers, and it repeats what you believed you had to be in order to be safe or loved. This voice doesn't evolve with you. It stays frozen in the past. It reacts as if you're still that child, that outsider, that uncertain version of yourself. And so every new challenge, every leap forward, is met with echoes of old fears. Don't try. Don't risk. Don't believe in yourself too much. At first, it may have served a purpose. Kept you in line. Protected you from risk. Helped you avoid judgment. But over time, it stopped being protective and became oppressive. Now, it doesn't guide you. It holds you hostage. The voice of the inner critic isn't just negative, it's habitual. It speaks in patterns. Patterns like, all or nothing thinking, if I'm not perfect, I'm a failure. Personalization, it's all my fault. Catastrophizing, this will ruin everything. These thoughts come automatically. They're fast, rehearsed, and they feel like truth, but they're not. They're reflexes. They're leftovers from pain you didn't deserve, and stories that were never truly yours. Left unchallenged, they become the lens through which you see yourself. Does any of that sound familiar? If so, you're not alone. But not all internal feedback is bad. Sometimes we need to question ourselves. Self-awareness matters. That's constructive criticism, the kind that says, this didn't go well. What can I learn, or I didn't handle that right? How can I grow? The inner critic, on the other hand, is not constructive. It doesn't seek growth, it seeks punishment. It doesn't ask questions, it makes declarations. You're a failure. You'll never change. You don't deserve better. This kind of self-talk doesn't make you stronger, it makes you smaller. It doesn't build character, it chips away at your confidence. It keeps you trapped in cycles of self-doubt, perfectionism, and silent shame. But there is another way. Psychologist Kristin Neff reminds us that we don't grow through self-hate. We grow through self-compassion. That doesn't mean letting yourself off the hook. It means speaking to yourself with the same honesty and kindness you'd offer to someone you love. It means telling the truth, not the critic's truth, but your truth. The one that sees your messiness, your effort, your growth, and still chooses care over cruelty. The inner critic says, "You're failing." Self-compassion says, "You're struggling, and that's human." The critic says, "You're broken." Self-compassion says, "You're healing." One voice keeps you trapped. The other sets you free. Understanding your inner critic is the first step. Because when you recognize it, when you really hear it for what it is, you gain the power to stop identifying with it. You stop reacting to it. You stop believing that every harsh thought is true. And for the first time, you begin to respond, not with fear, but with clarity. Not with shame, but with care. Because you don't need a harsher voice in your head. You need a wiser one. And that voice is already in you, waiting to be heard. So now that you understand where your inner critic comes from, and how deeply it can affect your thoughts, your energy, even your identity, it's time to shift from awareness to action. In this part of the video, we're going to break down practical strategies for quieting that voice, retraining your mind, and creating a new kind of relationship with yourself, one that's rooted not in fear or shame, but in clarity, strength, and self-respect. If you've ever felt like you're stuck in your own head, spiraling through doubt or guilt or hesitation, this part is for you. Because it's one thing to understand the critic. It's another to stand up to it, especially when it speaks in your own voice. That's why this isn't about fighting some abstract idea. It's about learning to meet yourself differently in the moments when the old voice returns, in the mirror, in the silence before sleep, in the hesitation before trying something new. It's about choosing a new response, not once, but repeatedly, until your brain, your body, your story starts to change. The first and most direct tactic is simple, but powerful: challenge the voice. Don't just absorb it, interrupt it. When your mind tells you you're going to fail, pause and ask, what's the evidence? When it says, they're judging you, ask, is that true, or is that fear talking? These small acts of questioning weaken the automatic grip of those thoughts. They shift you from being a passive listener to an active observer. And that shift matters. Because the moment you begin observing your thoughts rather than identifying with them, you've already disrupted the cycle. The moment you create distance, even an inch, you make room for something else, your voice, not the internalized fear, not the critic's echo, but yours. This is where Jung's idea becomes real, that until you make the unconscious conscious, it controls your life. And the inner critic loves staying in the shadows. But when you call it out, when you give it a name, a pattern, a shape, it begins to lose its power. After you interrupt the thought, you need to replace it. Not with some shallow motivational line, but with language that is both honest and empowering. This is the true use of affirmation. Not to deny your fear, but to support your courage. Instead of "I'm such a failure," try "I'm learning, and that takes time." Instead of "I never get it right," try "every attempt brings me closer." Repeat it enough, and your brain starts building a new default setting, one that encourages growth, instead of punishing effort. And don't stop at language. Bring it into your body. The critic doesn't just live in thoughts, it shows up in the way your shoulders hunch, your breath shortens, your stomach knots. That's where mindfulness comes in. Not as a buzzword, but as a tool. When the critic hits, return to your breath. Notice your feet. Feel the present moment. Every second you're grounded is a second that voice loses volume. Try anchoring yourself physically, stretch, walk slowly, place your hand on your chest. These gestures send signals to your nervous system that you are safe, and that safety is exactly what the inner critic never knew. You're teaching your body that compassion is not just a concept, it's an experience. One you can return to. One you can rebuild inside yourself. Then comes the part most people skip, self-compassion. Not as a reward for doing well, but as your default response when things go wrong. Kristin Neff calls it the foundation of real resilience. When your inner critic says, "You blew it," respond with, "This is hard, and I'm allowed to struggle." It may sound small, but these tiny shifts in tone change the emotional environment you live in. You stop walking on glass inside your own mind. Over time, this rewires your internal dialogue. You begin to expect kindness from yourself. And eventually, when the old harsh voice speaks up, it starts to feel out of place, like a stranger in a home that no longer belongs to it. Finally, learn to reframe. Don't erase the experience, reinterpret it. If you made a mistake, instead of "I failed," try, "Now I know what not to do." If you felt judged, instead of "They think I'm weak," try, "Maybe they're just seeing my humanity." Reframing isn't delusion, it's wisdom. It turns wounds into lessons, and fear into momentum. This is how you shift from survival to strength. From default to intention. From self-doubt to self-trust. These practices aren't about silencing the inner critic once and for all. They're about building something stronger than it, your capacity to return to yourself, again and again. Quietly. Kindly. Steadily. And that's the real voice worth listening to. And if any part of this video is speaking to something inside you, if you feel seen, understood, or even just a little bit lighter, I'd love for you to stay connected. Leave a comment, subscribe, or share this with someone who might need it. It means more than you know. Every message, every share, every quiet moment where you think "This was exactly what I needed" helps this content reach someone else who's still stuck in the same cycle you're learning to step out of. You've challenged the voice. You've learned how to interrupt it, to breathe through it, to speak to yourself differently. But what now? What comes after the silence? This is where it gets powerful. Because beneath every inner critic lives something waiting to wake up, something the critic tried to protect, but ended up burying: your confidence, and your capacity to endure. That quiet, steady sense of "I can," not because everything is perfect, but because I've been through enough to keep going. In this part of the video, we're going to explore how to rebuild that part of you, how to create self-confidence that doesn't depend on praise or performance, and resilience that doesn't shatter the moment things fall apart. And if you've ever felt like you're starting too late, like too much damage has been done, like your self-belief is something other people were born with but you somehow missed, this part is especially for you. Let's start with this truth: confidence isn't loud. It's not about always knowing what to do. It's not arrogance, and it's not perfection. It's the quiet trust in yourself, that you'll figure it out, that you'll get through, that even if it hurts, you'll come back from it. But here's the hard part: confidence isn't built in ease, it's built in recovery. It's not about getting it right on the first try. It's about choosing to try again, even after you didn't. Each time you fall and rise, that's a vote of trust in yourself. Each time you speak even while afraid, that's resilience. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to be ruled by it. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But it's also the most liberating. Because when you stop waiting to feel ready or perfect, you begin to act from something deeper than fear, something real. And action, even imperfect action, is what starts to rebuild the bridge back to self-trust. Confidence isn't something you think into existence. It's something you practice into reality. It grows every time you keep your own promise, even a small one. Every time you say, "I'll rest," and actually rest. "I'll speak up," and speak. "I'll begin," and take that first shaky step. It doesn't need to be flawless, it just needs to be honest. And when the critic returns, because it will, resilience means you don't collapse. You recognize it. You breathe. You respond. You carry on. This is where self-compassion and confidence intertwine. Kristin Neff teaches that true strength isn't about pushing through everything with a hardened shell, it's about holding yourself kindly in the middle of the storm. Not in spite of your struggles, but because of them. Resilience doesn't mean things don't hurt. It means they don't destroy your sense of self. You begin to understand, I can feel this, and still keep moving. You begin to trust, even when I'm unsure, I'm still capable. You stop measuring your worth by outcomes, and start measuring it by alignment. Did I show up for myself? Did I stay honest? Did I stay kind? And here's something most people miss. True confidence is built in private moments, not public ones. It's built when no one's watching, and you choose not to abandon yourself. It's built at 2 a.m., when your thoughts spiral, and you gently guide them back. It's built after a failure, when no one's cheering, and you whisper, "Let's try again." That's real power. Not performance. Not perfection. But presence. So if this part of the video is reaching something inside you, if it reminds you of who you were before the doubt took over, hold on to it. Come back to it when you forget. Share it if someone you love is fighting the same voice. Because the truth is, the inner critic was never stronger than you. It was just louder. And now you have a choice, to make your voice, your truth, your resilience louder than fear. Not overnight. Not all at once. But one small, steady act at a time. That's how self-confidence is built. That's how your story begins to change. Not by silencing your fear, but by deciding to speak anyway. So let's step back for a moment and look at where you are now. You started this video carrying a voice, maybe one you've lived with for so long, you stopped noticing it was even there. A voice that told you who you could be, what you were allowed to want, how small you had to stay in order to be safe. And now? You've named it. You've seen where it came from, not from truth, but from old fears, buried shame, and inherited expectations. You've recognized how it shows up, in the hesitation before speaking, in the tension in your chest, in the way you talk to yourself when no one else is listening. You've learned how that voice can distort reality, sabotage growth, and slowly disconnect you from your own worth. But more importantly, you've started to reclaim your response. You've practiced interrupting that cycle. You've begun speaking to yourself with more honesty, more humanity, more care. You've seen that confidence isn't a pose, it's a quiet return to self-trust. And resilience isn't about being unbreakable, it's about knowing how to come back to yourself when things fall apart. You've been doing deep work here. Not easy work. Not glamorous. But real. And if you've made it this far, still watching, still breathing with it, still feeling those quiet "yes, that's me" moments, then something in you is ready. Ready to choose a different voice. Ready to stop shrinking just to feel safe. Ready to walk away from the mental patterns that were never really yours to begin with. But let's be honest, this isn't a one-time shift. The inner critic doesn't vanish after one insight. It returns, especially when you're expanding. It gets louder right before you grow. That's why this is not the end. It's the beginning of something deeper. Because in the next videos, we're going further. Into the moments when the critic changes shape, into perfectionism, people-pleasing, emotional numbness. We'll look at how your fear of failure and your fear of visibility are often the same thing. We'll talk about trauma loops, false identities, and how to rebuild a sense of self that doesn't rely on performance or approval. We'll get clearer. Braver. More grounded. Together. So if something in this video stirred you, if you felt seen, if a part of you softened, if another part sat up straighter, stay on this journey. Save it. Rewatch it. Let it be a reminder, a returning point. Because you don't need to go back to war with yourself. That was never the way forward. Your power was never in the volume of your inner critic. It's in your choice to respond differently. It's in the quiet moment where you pause, breathe, and say, "Not this time." It's in every small act of presence, of compassion, of truth, repeated, lived, and chosen again. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work most people run from. This isn't just about healing your mind, it's about remembering your voice. And we'll keep strengthening that voice, quietly, consistently, together, one video at a time. I'll see you in the next one.